Thanks for joining us here on Weather Nation. We are now joined by the National Hurricane Center Deputy Director, Jaime Rhome. Jaime, thank you so much for joining us today. We're here to talk a little bit about some changes happening with the forecast cone. Can you take it away and let us know what those changes are?
Yeah, for starting this hurricane season, we're going to start an experimental process where we augment the cone with what I would argue is far more important information, which is the existing tropical storm and hurricane watches and warnings. What a lot of people don't realize about the cone is it doesn't tell you that much about whether your community will be impacted or to what degree your community will be impacted. But a lot of people try to infer that information from the cone. And you can see an example here behind me. All these colors here are showing you, in this example here, this is not an actual storm, but an example of the different watches and warnings that would be in effect for that type of track.
And tell us the goal of some of these changes for the average viewer. What do you hope that this will help them bring as far as clarity-wise when tracking a storm?
To bring the actual hazards of a hurricane forward and have it be a hazards first approach. A lot of people look at the cone first and maybe then they get to the hazards, if at all. We want to flip it and have them start with the hazards. How much wind is going to come in my community? What time would the wind might arrive? Am I going to have heavy rain and flooding in my community? Am I going to have storm surge in my community? These are the fundamental questions that people need to be asking themselves during a hurricane threat, and the cone doesn't tell you any of that.
And how long did it take your team to kind of come up with this format and put forth this experimental design?
I would say about a year or so looking over the existing research on how people perceive hurricanes and hurricanes risk, and then a few months to really sift through a prototyping phase, or a phase where you're just sort of trying different things to see how it works. And then we sort of settled in the 2023 hurricane season and a final approach, and we were testing it behind the scenes during the 2023 season to sort of see how it would look and feel to us.
Because originally we were mostly looking at kind of the coastal alerts. Now you're focusing more on, okay, when this cone gets onto land, what are the alerts that we want people to really be aware of?
Yeah, and this is a really important point to make. The old cone highlighted the tropical storm watches and warnings and the hurricane watches and warnings, but only the coastal warnings. And in fact, if you look at trends in mortality or trends in deaths associated with hurricanes, we're getting greater and greater of mortality or higher mortality inland, away from the landfall location.
And if you could tell viewers and folks that could be impacted by the incoming hurricane season, what is the main thing you really want them to grasp from this change that they're going to be seeing?
To stop looking at these models and look at this. This is the most important, accurate, and relevant information that you could look at in a hurricane. All that other stuff on social media, especially those spaghetti diagrams, are really, really distracting, and you really can't discern anything about your risk from them.
And is there anything else that you want to make sure the public knows specifically about this cone, about the hurricane seasons to come, anything at all?
Yeah, so this season, if you start looking at and using this new experimental cone, if you're in one of these colored areas, that means that you're under risk. Whether you're in the cone or not, if you're under one of these colored areas, that means that you are under risk of the impacts of a hurricane, and it's time to take action.
Well, Jaime, thank you so much for joining us here today to bring us such this valuable information. And we look forward to talking to you in the future and keeping tabs on how the cone goes this next season.
Yeah, thank you for having us.